Hey guys, welcome and ting and ting and ting. How you all doing out there? And I haven't done a video on Canada in a while. It's one of the places I'm interested in also. And hey, why not do one? Canada is like 6 hours up this way, not maybe seven, but it's 6 hours to Michigan, to Detroit to be exact, because some of my family members live in Detroit. And Windsor, Canada is right across the border from here. So, I want to check out the cost of living in Canada. Let's see how it works with America in relation to America, because I'm going to give you guys a little vibe and think about what we pay here, and in relation to other places that have done this particular topic on, like Romania and Serbia and places like that. Let's go ahead and YouTube and simmer and see what if there's any difference and if we see a trend in prices going up all over the world. Because where you live, you complain about it there, thinking it's your government that's creating it, but it's a universal phenomenon. Let's check it out.
We spent what? 50% on housing last year? And that's already taking into consideration that we lived in a studio apartment, which only cost us $1,200 per month for nearly half a year. Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today in this video, I want to talk about the real cost of living in Canada, specifically in Toronto, because that's where I live. And yes, I do know that it is not the same everywhere, and Toronto and of course Vancouver are among those cities where everything is most expensive. Now let's get right into it, and let's start off very simple. I want to give you a high level overview of what we spent last year. Now looking at this pie chart, you can immediately see, no surprise here, that number one ranked expense is housing with 50.6%, followed by food 22%, and the third biggest expenses is special expenses. What are special expenses? What does that include? Don't worry, I'll get into all of that later. Now before we get into further detail, I think that I need to give you an overview of how we do accounting for our expenses. And this is a method that I sort of developed over the years. It just worked best for me, but of course you do not have to do it this way. I divide our expenses into two major categories. The first one are basic expenses, and the second category are special expenses. What I categorize as basic expenses are basic living expenses that reliably occur every month in similar amounts. Things like your rent or your mortgage, for example. Whereas special expenses are those kind of expenses that don't occur every month and not always even regularly. And this includes things like traveling, health-related expenses, that one-time purchase of a treadmill, something you do not do every month. Let's start and talk about the basic expenses. Let's go over to this table here, basic expenses, and here I'm giving you both the monthly and yearly amounts. And remember, this is still as a couple for two people. So for food, every month we spend almost $1,200, and this $1,200 consists of groceries, $700, eating out and coffees, snacking, $470, and LCBO or alcohol, $6. And I know this average is super low, but there are some health related reasons for that. We've been drinking much less alcohol lately, and hence this very small number. And for the whole year, the whole last year, we spent $14,112 for food. Now on to the next category, which is housing. On a monthly basis here, we spend $2,700. On a yearly basis, the whole last year, we spent $32,318. I know it's
Man, that is a lot. The people I work with, they wouldn't be able to afford this. I wouldn't be able to afford that. And maybe that's why I don't live in a big city. I mean, yeah, I guess I could afford it, but it's going to be like stretching it there. It would be like living above my means, you know what I mean? But my goodness, and that's with two people living. And it's a studio apartment, it's not even a house. Of course, you live in a big city, Toronto, but still, people are, good Lord, man, how are people surviving out there if they don't have, because, I'm a working class type of dude, but I'm not even like, I'm not upper middle class or barely middle class working dude, you know what I mean? And good Lord Almighty, look at that. That's crazy. And the thing about it is too, though, if you decide to live outside of the city and commute, that's gas money for one. Then it messes with your car, so you're gonna have to have more car repairs. The time it's gonna take to go in and out of the city from the burbs, you know what I mean? It used to be people go to the burbs, and then they could go back and forth. But traffic is so horrendous now, you know what I mean? And on top of that, the government realized, hey, what we're gonna do is we are going to put tolls. I don't know how it is in Serbia or Romania or any of the other places that I react to, or in Canada for that matter, but they have these tolls, you know what I mean? And sometimes, like my buddy, he works in Washington, D.C., and he lives in Virginia. He's got to go through like 3 or 4 tolls before he even get to his job. So either way, you're shafted. Somebody's making a killing.
It's crazy. It's a lot. This consists, number one, of rent and mortgage. In our case, 5 months of rent, because after that we actually moved to our condo that we purchased. So we had a bit of an overlap there. So in the end, we paid 5 months of rent and 8 months of mortgage. And for those of you who know, our previous studio was super, super cheap, dirt cheap. We paid around $1,200 per month for that studio. Next item is hydro and water. We spent on average $84. And then there's laundry. Here I put a note: at the old place where we lived for 5 months, we actually used a coin machine, so we had to pay for laundry. And here in the new condo, we have our own washing machine, so we do not pay to wash our clothing, but of course the bill goes into hydro and water. So $32,000 per year just for housing. On to the next category, communication, and this includes internet and our phone plans. Here in total, we spend $165 per month, or $1,600 for the whole last year. And this is the breakdown. So for internet, at our old place, we had to pay for internet. It cost about $68, and last we used
I pay $106 for low grade internet living where I live. $106. They live in the city, they pay $68. But granted, that's Canadian money there, but still. Wow.
Bell. But then when we moved to our condo, luckily internet was already included in the maintenance fee. But yes, then there was the maintenance fee.
Yeah.
So here we have my husband's phone plan. His is $57 per month, and mine is on average $39.7. And the reason is because I switched from Kudo, where I previously paid 50 something, or
I pay $80 a month for phone. And it's one of those pretty much it's a prepaid plan. It's not like one of them fancy smancy phones, you know. You have an Android, and I pay $80 a month. And I've noticed something that they do with these prepaid plans. Well, no, that's not, because my internet used to be like $80, and I was late once, and it went to $106 just like that, and it stayed there. It never came back down. It's just weird how they find ways to add money onto your bills, you know, the slightest thing. And it was just a misstep on my part, you know. I totally forgot to pay the thing. I thought I did, you know. And then I went, whoa, wait a minute, no. Something didn't get paid. So I checked and I didn't pay it. And it was like 2 days late and I paid it. But it just jumped to $106 after that.
$60 perhaps to public mobile in October, and now I only pay $16.95 per month for my phone bill. Next up is transportation, for which we spend $163 per month, or almost $2,000 per year. And some of you might be wondering, how can you spend only that little money per month per year on transportation? Don't you have to pay for gas, parking, and so on? For those of you who don't know yet, we don't own a car here in Toronto. We don't drive. Previously, we lived in Indonesia and we did drive, and we're sick of driving. We're sick of the traffic. So we're quite happy that Toronto has a quite functioning public transportation system, although it is not perfect, but overall for us it is much more affordable than owning a car. We're saving so much money by not having a car and using the TTC. So this is the breakdown. The $163 consists of transit for my husband, for which he spent on average $77.5. I spend $58.3 per month, so it's a bit less because I work at home more, while he's working in a hybrid system where on some days he works at home, some days he goes to the office, so that's why he spends more for the TDC. And lastly, we
No, for me, I deliberately did not get a vehicle when I moved back here from Nashville, because I used to live in Nashville for this a while back, because I had cars here, and I'll tell you what, the roads here aren't the best, so your cars get a banging. It's decent. It's not as bad as a third world country, but your cars get a beaten up here. You know what I mean? And the taxes are really high for cars here. You know what I mean? So it's like, hey, the bus station is right next to where I live. I spend on average like, well, no, I do spend like $8 a week on transportation. It's a dollar. It used to be 75. I remember when it was 50, and ever so often they raised it. So I spent about $8 or so. You know what I mean? Everything that I would want is in walking distance. You know what I mean? But so it's not, transportation is not that bad. When I lived in New York, was kind of the same thing. I used the subway, so paying on transportation wasn't that bad. And there were three of us in the house: mom, my wife, my ex-wife, and I. And we all had decent jobs. So when we paid the rent, it came down to pretty nice, because pretty low amount, because it was three of us paying it. So that was pretty good, and that's what made New York affordable for us. But my goodness, man, just to survive and live. And if you notice, a lot of countries put a lot of laws in place so that you can't do certain things, so you have to buy the services. And of course, a lot of the things they do benefits private companies. Like, I'll give you an example. Where I live here, it's against the law to catch rainwater. It's against the law to wash your clothes in it. But if you're walking in the rain, your clothes get wet anyway, don't it? So it's a city ordinance, I should say. I guess it's a different from a law. But you could be fined if they catch you catching rainwater. Uh-huh. And I think the next step too is to ban people from having the little spice racks and stuff, that, well, the spice little things where they grow a little spice or have a little backyard garden in the city. I guarantee you at some point they're going to say, oh, that's against the law, you know what I mean? The soil isn't healthy, and all that. They find ways to get that money from you.
also have Uber and Lyft. Yes, once in a while we do take an Uber or Lyft, especially in the winters when it gets really cold and we get home at night after something and we just don't want to wait for the bus or the subway, and we just take an Uber or Lyft. The last item that falls under basic expenses are donations, for which we spend $178 per month, or a bit over $2,000 per year. And yes, this includes donations to the church, to charity, but also includes a little bit of support to family members. So the subtotal of our basic expenses for the two of us, expenses that occur every month, were $52,156 for the whole last year. Per month, that comes down to $4,346. And if we calculate it on a per person basis, it is $2,173. But a very important note here, for this per person number, you really need to take it with a grain of salt, because a lot of things that are in this list are things that we share. For example, our small studio apartment, our utilities. When you live as a couple or with a roommate, you have the benefit of sharing all these expenses, and hence this rather low amount. But if you live on your own, if you rent your own place, then of course $2,000 per month will just not be enough in a city like Toronto. I would say that our
Shoot, $2,000 a month is barely enough for a little itty bitty place like this. But oh man, a roommate. Unless I'm married to somebody, I don't want to live with them. I'm sorry. I want a roommate. See, because if you have a roommate, there's all these other things coming into play, like who they bring in. You have no control who is in your apartment when you have a roommate. They could bring anybody in. Shoot, it's hard enough being married with the friends that the people bring into your house. You know, I could have tested that for my marriage. There's all kinds of like weird people in my house, sleeping on my couch and stuff. I had somebody do cocaine on my couch one time. I had a 5-year-old kid in there. It wasn't my friend. I'm real careful with who I bring into my house. And that's one reason why I live alone. And it could get expensive living alone, but the headache of not having to deal with somebody else. Okay, you could have a male roommate, then he's going to bring his girls in there. Or if you have a girlfriend, she's going to be in there. And they're going to feel they have a say in what's going on in the place because, their boyfriend lived there. Or some people have female roommates. And where I live, people have a hard time being a good judge of what's best for them. So they always have these bad boys, and then he's gonna want to come in the house, and he's gonna have say in stuff, because his girl live here, and you ain't gonna do this, and you ain't gonna do that. I just rather live alone, man. All that other stuff, there's just too much stress.
Food bill is rather high, so it's not as low as it can be. And one of the reasons is that we really pay a lot of attention to what we eat, to our nutrition, and we try to buy high quality food. And yes, that does include meat, seafood, cheese, and a lot of organic produce as well. But if you ask me, can you get by with less? Then definitely. If you have a much, much more simple meal plan, and if you do not buy organic, I would say that one person could get by with $300 to $400 per month for food, provided they rarely eat out. And yes, we also eat out. We eat out on average maybe twice per week, so 8 times per month. And once in a while, we also buy coffee outside, have some snacks. So that's included in this budget. And by
I never eat out. Never. And it's not the expense of eating out, it's what they put in the food. I don't know what they put in the food. They use all those freaking vegetable oils and all those seed oils and stuff in places to give it taste. You know what I mean? Stuff is all healthy. Nah, no, 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 no. I don't eat out at all. People always want to go here. Eating out is a big deal here, man. Everybody wants to go to the Applebee's and they want to go to the little pubs and stuff where they sell these greasy sandwiches filled with all these chemicals and stuff in it. I don't eat out at all. I used to, especially when I was married, and even then I was careful. I didn't eat fast food. But no, I don't eat out. Not because it's expensive. That's part of it too. But it's mainly because I don't know what they put in that stuff. I don't. And she's right because I try to eat organic everything. You understand what I'm saying? And that's always like $2 or $3 a little more than the normal food and thing. Let's get back to that.
By the way, guys, I'd be really curious to know how much do you guys spend living in Canada if you're already living in Canada. If you're in Toronto, do you spend more or less than we spend? And what about other cities? I would really love to know what living in other cities aside from Toronto and Vancouver costs. Is it really much cheaper or is it similar? Now, one thing that you might be asking is what about clothing and all the other expenses that one might have? So while I just talked about basic living expenses, part A, things like
Well, she mentioned clothing. Being a giant, everything is more expensive. And I try to explain that to people, and they go, no, it's not. Yeah, it is. It's more expensive. Being 7 foot 1 inch tall, oh, he's a superhuman being. Let's give him a little more. Let's do the most. I remember going to a grocery, to not to a grocery store, going to a shoe store, and the guy was like, man, it's going to take like 5 calls to get that shoe on. It's like, so that's why these fools, things are so expensive. But if it's not expensive, I guarantee you it doesn't last. If you don't get the higher quality, more expensive stuff as a big person, it ain't gonna last long. Like the jeans I have on now, I spend a little more than usual on them because before I used to, just buy cheaper jeans and stuff. And those cheap jeans, boom, they tore up real easy. And in strange places too. You know what I mean? It's just like, bam, these have lasted me pretty good. So that's a good thing. But it's relatively expensive, relatively. I guess if I live in a bigger city, I could shop around because, and see about the best big and tall stores. But they don't have stores for tall people here. They have stores for big people, and they call it big and tall because it goes up to 38 inches inseam in pants. I go to 41 inseam, and usually the waist here is like 48, 50. I'm down to like a 32 waist now. I've gotten up to 44, but I'm down to like a 32 now with conscious eating and stuff like that. And that brings up the expenses there, I have to tell you.
Clothing, etc., will fall under special expenses part B, which I will get to in a second. One really important thing to keep in mind, guys, is that all these expenses for everything is paid with after tax money. And that's something that I just recently became more aware of. So let's say, for example, that your living expenses as a single person are $35,000 and you earn $60,000. So at first glance, someone who's not familiar with Canada or taxation in general might think, yoo, I have $25,000 left to spend on things that I want or save or invest. But unfortunately, there's this thing called taxes. So if we plug in this income number of 60,000 into this TurboTax calculator, 60,000, and let's assume you're living in Ontario, after taxes, so federal taxes, provincial taxes, CPP, EI premiums, your total taxes are $13,798. This is just an estimation, by the way. You are left with an after-tax income of $46,200. The disposable income that you actually have after taxes that you get to spend made me even more conscious of every dollar I spent. And also, more importantly, that if I do not save and invest enough, then over the years, there will be almost nothing left of that money. So yes, it's so important to save and invest. And even if you haven't started yet, it is not too late. And just in case you're still looking for an investment platform, I just want to let you know that I've been using Wealthsimple for the last 3 years. And I'm not claiming that it is the best because honestly, I have not tried out all the investment platforms. But so far, I must say that I'm pretty happy with it. It's been pretty reliable and also very easy to use. And what I like most of all is that they charge $0 commission for stock and ETF trading. In case you do sign up and you fund your account, I do receive a small commission of $25. But so do you, because at the moment, Wealthsimple has a campaign where every person who signs up and funds their account using the link in my descriptions below will get a sign up bonus of $25 as well. So win-win. Now let's move on to part B, which are special expenses. So I set up this category of special expenses for those kind of expenses that do not occur regularly or monthly, but either once a year or several times a year. Item number 1, on travel, last year we spent $1,750. Then there's a category of one-offs. One-offs are things like moving costs that we have when we move to our new condo, home blessings, so things that wouldn't happen every year. For that, we spent $1,600 for the whole year, or $134 per month. Next category, health. So health in our case includes things like supplements, sport equipment like a scale, a digital scale, barbells, and other special health expenses. So this will differ largely from person to person depending on your needs. In our case, we spent a whopping $2,700 last year, or an average $228 per month. Then there's the category of cosmetics. So yeah, these are things like face creams, sheet masks, mascara, makeup remover, and so on. And for that, we spend $780. Next up, we have gifts. You know, those birthdays, those red packets you give out for a Chinese New Year, thank you gifts, and so on. And that amounted to almost $1,000 per year, or $77 per month. Next category is clothing. And
They must make a decent sum of money, boy. Or they're very meticulous and all. Apparently so, because she's got it broken down, boy. Whew.
for that, the two of us, by the way, this is for two people, we spent $1,076 per year, or an average $90 per month. And I am happy to say that both my husband and I were pretty even in this category. I perhaps spend 55% of the budget, he spends 45% of it, but it's quite even. And yes, clothing includes that winter jacket and also shoes, sneakers, flip-flops, bathing suits, accessories, like earrings, etc. So everything that we wear falls under clothing. Next category is furniture and home. So this includes things like my water boiler, my French press, bathroom scrubber, shower filter, everything that we use in our home that is not part of our monthly bill. And for that, we spent $1,500 last year. On one hand, this was a bit high because we just moved to our new condo, so there were a ton of expenses. But on the other hand, this is rather low because we didn't make any significant furniture purchases. Next up are subscriptions, for which we paid $565 for the whole last year, or almost $50 per month. Subscriptions here does not include our phone bill and internet, because those are things that occur on a monthly basis. So subscriptions here, this might perhaps be interesting to you. I know it's called subscriptions for the reason because you subscribe and then you use the service continuously. But no, that's not how we do it, because we want to save money. We usually subscribe for something for a month or 2 or even 3, and then we unsubscribe for most things, not all things. Other things like Netflix or Paramount Plus, oftentimes we only subscribe 1 month, 2 months, and we watch all our favorite shows and series in that time, and then we unsubscribe for a few months, and then if we want to watch something again, we subscribe again. Next category is work, and this category only applies to my husband for his work related expenses because he actually goes to the office, whereas I, like I said, mostly work at home. And this is the reality that many people do not take into consideration, which is that if you need to go to the office to work, there are a lot of expenses that are often unaccounted for. So for one, transportation, but we already included that under our TDC bill. Then there are meals and snacks, because when you go to the office, you just tend to buy more food outside or buy coffee outside. And then there's also socializing. Sometimes after work, you meet colleagues for a drink and so on. All of that costs money. Anyways, in our case, we spent $430 for the whole last year, or $36 on average per month. Next category, books and learning. For that, we spent $106, and this is a relatively small amount because we buy most books as Kindle books, and believe it or not, there are a ton of books out there, especially classics, which you can get for either free or only $1 or $2. Next category is electronics and gadgets, and for that, we spent $23 for the whole year. I know it's cool. Unbelievable. Yeah. It even doesn't make sense to calculate the monthly average. Because I have my business, I am a content creator, most of the electronics that I buy, I can include as my business expense. They're deductible. For example, the iMac that I bought last year, or my ring light, or my additional key light, and so on, I can put that all under my business expenses, so I do not include it in our own household expenses. Last category, stationery, and same reasoning here, and that is why we only spent $18 for our personal stationery usage. Okay, now we've arrived at the subtotal B, special expenses for the whole year. We spent $11,553. So you see it adds up. So on a monthly basis, we spent almost $1,000 on this special expense category. If we calculate this per person, that's almost $500 extra. Now we've arrived at the exciting part, and that is where we will tie everything together in our grand total under total expenses here. So here you have it, total expenses, monthly averages for us as a couple. For basic expenses, last year per month on average, we spent $4,388. And on special expenses, on average, we spent $963. So as our grand total, last year on average as a couple, we spent $5,350 each month. And let's just do a quick calculation. If we multiply this by 12 months, that gives us $64,203. Remember, again, this is after tax money. And for all those pie chart lovers out there, here's the pie chart to it. Even if we add up special expenses to basic expenses, everything, still housing tops the chart at number 1, with 50.6% of the total expenses. Number two is food, 22%. Then the category of special expenses, 18%. And then you have those smaller categories. And of course, in your case, it might look very, very different. And you might also choose to use a different categorization depending on what you want to track. Here are the total expenses per person. But again, take it with a grain of salt, like I said, because the calculation doesn't work as straightforward as this, but just to give you a very, very general idea. So basic expenses per month, about $2,200 per person, and $500 for special expenses, which brings us to $2,675 per person per month. So to be more realistic, I would say that if you're no longer a student, you would need to, as a single person who does not share a unit with someone else, you would need to prepare for at least $3,000. Phew. So guys, this turned out to be a rather long video, but I do hope that this was helpful.
Okay. Wow. I like how she broke it down there. You know what I mean? I maybe need to sit down and start breaking down all my expenses and stuff like that because I don't know on average how much I spend a month. Uh, I'm kind of fortunate because I live in a place where I don't pay a whole lot because I don't have to pay for water and I don't have to pay for electric. The only bills that I pay here is my phone bill and my cable bill and my rent. I've been healthy so far. Knock on wood. I don't have to spend anything on that. Uh, as far as food is a big thing for me, really. Uh, Not only that I eat as healthy as I can, we live in a place where there's not a whole lot of healthy choices. And the little, like for instance, organic avocados, organic lemons, my grocery store haven't had that in like 2 or 3 weeks. But I walk in an area that they call the ghetto. It's not really, it's not like a New York City ghetto or a Chicago ghetto, but they call it the ghetto. They call it the ghetto Kroger. Uh, Now, if you drive about 10 minutes this way, there's a place called Barbersville where they have everything. They even have a Starbucks in the Kroger there. They're fancy schmancy. They got a whole cheese bar and everything in there because that's where all the rich people live. So they have more variety up there. And then the other Kroger that's even closer to me, I don't know, about 5 blocks this way, it's like a middle class Kroger. We call it the college Kroger because that's where the college is there. College kids could just walk across the street and they're in Kroger's. They have a better selection. I've been up there and it's a little bigger store. But the cost of living is just soaring all over the world, especially rent. For some reason, rent is skyrocketing. And we can't really blame the landlords. It's the companies that that you have to pay. They're the ones, I mean, like water bills just keep going up every year, sometimes twice a year. Every time you turn, they're trying to get a raise, and they usually put it a 1% raise, but 1% is like a fortune to people who live here and living from paycheck to paycheck. It's crazy. I hope you guys learned some stuff from that, and I like how she does her whole breakdown of stuff. Maybe that would help you sit down and do stuff because I've sat down and I've planned out my money, not as detailed as she did, but and it has helped me a lot. You have to plan, and I was just for a while there, I was just like so worried about working and writing books and doing what I wasn't paying attention to my expenses that much. But now that I am, I'm doing a lot better. But anyway, man, I hope you guys are doing really good and life is going good for you all. But we're gonna go to the next video here. I'll leave this a link in in the description for this video, and I hope you guys have a good day. Oh, by the way, I have a membership section to my YouTube channel. If you're interested, it's $2.99 a month. I do all kinds of stuff in there. I do storytelling. I tell a lot of stories about me growing up. I also do something called Today in History, and where I pick certain dates and I give historical events that happen on that day. You know what I mean? I have a series of that going on there. And I'm going to start doing some cooking on there too. You know what I mean? I'm going to show you guys how to cook Caribbean food because I know you could get the ingredients wherever you are, Canada, Romania, Serbia. You should be able to get it because I'm going to keep it as basic as possible. You understand what I'm going to say and think? But thank you guys for watching this with me. I hope you guys have a good weekend. Y'all take care of each other, all right? Cool runnings.